All right. Hey, let me get started here so I can see how much time I have left. So this is me. I created Chocolatey about 8.5 years ago. I have a lot of experience in infrastructure management when it comes to Windows. And also worked in configuration management for another organization. We're not going to talk about that, so we'll just get right past that. So today, we're going to talk about Chocolatey. We're going to talk about organizational use, especially when it comes to Ansible and what that kind of looks like. Right, and then we're going to do some demos. Hopefully the demo gods are kind to us today. Hopefully. So, be honest, by a show of hands, how many people heard chocolate and came for the chocolate? Are Linux admins now supporting Windows? Have no idea why you're in here. Or are here for Chocolatey, right? Actually here for Chocolatey. Okay, fantastic. So everybody, if you currently use Chocolatey personally or in your organization, please stand up. All right. Stay standing if you started on version 10.15, which is the latest version. So if you're still on Chocolatey right now, you start on at least that version, right? How about 0.10.0? If you started using Chocolatey at 0.10.0 or past that, you could sit down, right? So if you were on 0.9.9 when you started, keep standing, right? 0.9833? Does anybody even know what 9833 was written in? No. No, sir. 9825. That's everybody. Okay, so the people that were just standing, go ahead and stand back up. And so everybody that's standing, I have a t-shirt for you if I haven't already given you one. Come find me right after. So it's a shirt that looks like this. So it says Ansible Fest is the hashtag, right? So pretty nice. So pay attention, there's going to be another quiz. At the end of that quiz, we're going to give away one of these. Right? So it's a very nice shirt. All right. No, older. We didn't make it that far. All right, so what is Chocolatey? Anybody in here not know what Chocolatey is? This is our first, at least one person. Okay, a couple people don't raise their hands. That's cool. So Chocolatey is package management for Windows, right? So we like to think of it as Windows software management, but what it really brings to the table, above and beyond what you're going to see with, say, installers, is that it's going to be universal management for all aspects of Windows software. So it doesn't matter if it's an installer, it doesn't matter if it's a zip, it doesn't matter if it's your own runtime binaries, right? All of that stuff can be packaged up with Chocolatey and used and reported on, right? So that's what sets Chocolatey apart from pretty much anything else you're going to find on Windows. So with Chocolatey, you can do all that. Let's just shorten that down. Allows you to deploy any software anywhere with really any tool, right? So that's where Ansible comes in, and then be able to manage and track that software over time. So how many people in here are familiar with Powershell? You're going to love Chocolatey, right? So Chocolatey uses Powershell to do all of that Windows automation stuff. It's a framework, right? So it's very lightweight, amazingly flexible, and allows us to really easily manage Windows software. And it's really been a catalyst for a lot of organizations into moving in and reducing automation work on Windows. So at its core, command line. There's also a GUI. We're not going to talk about that much today because you're all under Ansible automation, right? And GUIs don't really work with that, so we'll move right past. There's also central management on the commercial edition. Central management gives us that reporting at a central place, so really nice for that. So we have really two editions when it comes to organizations, and that is our open source side, completely free, Apache 2 license, very business friendly. It's a bit of a DIY approach, so there are things that you're going to be doing to kind of set things up. When it comes to Chocolatey for business, a lot more UIs, smoother experience, and the more UIs are for your colleagues, right? Not for you guys. Those that need those GUIs. Lots of features that are geared towards organizational use, right? And so we've worked with a lot of organizations, and we've built a lot of stuff into Chocolatey for business that really gives folks a lot of those organizational use cases that they have. So we've already answered the questions on a lot of that. And it's easy to migrate between the two. So we made that strategy easy. Migrate into Chocolatey for business, God forbid, migrate away from Chocolatey for business, still pretty easy, right? So I'm going to take 1 second to talk about this, and then we're really going to kind of move past this. So when we talk about those commercial capabilities, one of the things we have is central management. We have package builder, package uploader, both can also be run from the command line. that really allows us to very quickly create packages from third-party installers. We have Package Internalizer, Package Audit. That's really about security, really kind of improving our security posture, giving us a little bit better reporting. We have elements of Package Synchronizer, which helps bring Chocolatey more in line with the stuff that we have in programs and features. We'll talk about one of those pieces of that today. And if you see you have that desktop side, or you're looking for a desktop side as well, there is a self-service GUI that gives non-admins the ability to install and upgrade their own software that you've approved, right? Really kind of making it easier to do things for those folks that are supporting help desks, right? And then we have some more environment optimizations in our commercial side. All right, so what is Chocolatey? We like to say it's software management for Windows that works, right? And why Chocolatey? Because this is not how you should manage software. One of my favorites. All right, so when we talk about organizational use of Chocolatey, we're really focused into 4 areas. That's packaging, internal repositories, we've got to have a place to put our packages, right? Deployment management, that's where Ansible comes in. And then reporting. We have what we currently have. We have the opportunity to add other things to that as well. Source control, continuous integration, also important. Much bigger topics than we can talk about today, though. And of course, there's some religious views that go down those routes, and we'll try not to get into that too much. So for the architecture for Chocolatey, when we talk about Chocolatey and organization, what we like to see is the blue box, right? So that blue box, you have everything's internal. This could be your private cloud. This could be on-prem. This could be maybe services that you're authenticating to, right? But you see in there, that's where all that Chocolatey stuff is. Over here is the community repository. It's outside of that blue box. You're not going to that directly, right? There are ways to get packages from there. We're going to talk about those. All right, so repositories is kind of at the heart of it. So what we're going to recommend, especially with Ansible, is a repository server like Artifactory, Nexus, or ProGet. And the reason is we need a place to actually install Chocolatey from internally. And we're going to see how we do that with Ansible, right? So how many people in here use a community repository? Have used a community repository personally? Right, so the first question that we tend to get is, why can't I just use the community repository? To which we respond, because we want full reliability for you, right? You cannot get that with that community repository. There's about 7,000 packages out there on the community repository. Every single version of every package that gets pushed goes through moderation. So it doesn't go live immediately. It gets pushed to a queue. It gets checked for quality and consistency. It gets checked to be sure they can actually install. It also gets validated against 50 to 60 antivirus scanners, right? So we push a lot of things up to VirusTotal. We're actually the biggest submitter of Windows software to VirusTotal. So, but what you'll see with a lot of those packages, so if you go look at that Google Chrome package, you'll notice there's no binaries in there, right? And that's because of distribution rights. On a public repository, Google would have a problem if those binaries were included inside of something being distributed that way, right? And so internally, you can embed stuff to your heart's desire. In fact, that's the most reliable method of using Chocolatey packages. And so we recommend that internally. But the public repository can never do that due to the distribution rights that it has in effect, right? And some of that comes down to you can't really control when those things break because they're using the internet to download things like that. And that's why we want, for organizations to have that full reliability, having internal repositories is the answer for that. And so there are ways to kind of make it behave in the similar way to what you see with the community repository, and ways to achieve that good reliability as well. When it comes to internal repositories, I mentioned earlier, we're going to recommend repository servers. And repository servers are Artifactory, Nexus, and ProGet. So what you get when you install one of those is you get a web interface. You get, of course, they have APIs too. So you get RBAC, and definitely necessary. And you'll get LDAP with some of them, also sometimes necessary. But when you do that install, you have access to setting up multiple repositories in that installation. And it doesn't just have to be Chocolatey and NuGet types. NuGet is what Chocolatey builds on top of, right? So anywhere there's a NuGet version 2 type API or repository, you can use Chocolatey there, right? And so you get access to other types of repositories as well. And that becomes really important, especially with using Ansible, because we're going to need a raw repository too, where we're going to put that install script for Chocolatey. All right, so packaging. Really, 2 big methods of packaging. One, to get from the community repository, what we're going to recommend is something called internalization. So you can do that on open source manually. We have something called Package Internalizer where you just run commands and it will go and it'll pre-download a package like Google Chrome. It will reach out to Google and download the binaries, put them in the package ahead of time, rewrite the packaging, and you get a recompiled package that's fully internalized, right? If Google Chrome has any dependencies, it goes all the way up the dependency chain and does that all the way up, right? So that's kind of a nice little feature in Chocolatey for Business, and we see people automate that. And so they'll take a Jenkins agent or TeamCity or something, and they'll put it out in the DMZ, and they'll give it access to some packages they're looking for. And when new versions of those are available on the community, pulls them in, puts them maybe into a test repository where you can do further detonation and other types of testing before you push those into your production repositories for consumption with the rest of the organization, right? The other is, of course, creating packages, right? And creating packages, we like to keep it somewhat simple. So Choco knew something. We're going to do that in a few minutes. What you're going to see, it's going to generate out some files that come with it out of a default template that has a lot of the work already complete, right? So a lot of interweave documentation in there that really helps us through that process of packaging. There's also Package Builder, which gives us that nice right-click on an installer, select from a context menu, create Chocolatey package, and in 5 seconds it figures out what it is, how to install it silently, generates the packaging, right? You're not going to find anything quite that fast, mostly because Chocolatey is hyper-optimized for that anyway, so it's going to be able to do this very quickly. And for about 70% of the installers you have, it's going to be able to fully automate everything. For those that it can't, what it'll do is it'll get everything arranged, and it leaves you a little to-do list. And it's a very specific to-do list. You need to figure this out, you need to figure this out, and then you're good. Right? This is also in that business side. So if you have non-silent installers, how many people have ever dealt with things that are craptastic? Let's use that as a technical term. Really bad installers, for some reason, you put the silent options to them and they never go away. Yeah, we all have to deal with that. Now, when it comes to any automation scenario, we still have to make it unattended, right? The industry standard for doing that, been around for probably around 20 years, probably because SECM in the beginning only supported MSI deploys, MSI repackaging, where you take an installer, you record it, you get an MSI that you will deploy instead. Same thing with Chocolatey. We have a need to do that. All right, so when it comes to deployment management, of course, this is where Ansible comes in, right? So down here, Ansible, right, type provider base. We also have script base. This allows us to support things. So if you are supporting Ansible and SECM together, you can actually deploy the same packages to both places, just hooking up the two technologies, Chocolatey to those other technologies and be able to do that. You just have a script base. We're not actually going to get into that today. We're going to focus more on Ansible, right? And so what we have on the right here, and it did come out quite nicely, is this is kind of setting up Chocolatey, all the recommended settings for organizational use, right? That's ensure Chocolatey is installed from our internal repository, set the cache location. That just makes Chocolatey more deterministic in cleaning up, right? Recommended setting. Increasing the timeout to 4 hours, so the command execution timeout of Chocolatey is defaulted to 45 minutes. Please bump it up to at least 4 hours by default. Disabling download progress, which Ansible may already take care of. I'd lean on Jordan or Matt for that. That's just so when the logs come through with Chocolatey, you don't start seeing lines downloading 1%, 2%, 3% of something. Removing the default public source, so that community repository, we're going to get rid of that. And we're going to set up our own internal sources, right? So we might have multiple we're setting it to. What's really nice is we can actually put a priority on those sources to kind of have Chocolatey prioritize where to go find packages first and then kind of work from there. All this still using even open source Chocolatey, right? So you can have your own internal repositories. It doesn't cost anything to do that if you're using something like Nexus or ProGet. So when we talk about installing Chocolatey, basically that same thing we saw earlier, maybe a little bigger. And then we can go look at chocolatey.org, install, select organization. I think I have that right here, right? So this is going to have that script. Now if I come over here, I think I have it up, right? And so in here, if I click on organization, this is really tiny. Excuse me a second. And so we can download the Chocolatey package, right? And that's going to bring down that latest version of Chocolatey. And then we will put that into our internal repository. And once we figure out what that is, we would simply type HTTP or HTTPS if we set up the certificates on it. Let's say internal OData URL. So OData is that type of repository. Typically when we go to it, that endpoint that we're looking for looks exactly like this as it's telling us. If I get there, we're going to see packages, right? So that's how we know we're at the right endpoint for using Chocolatey. Now, Chocolatey also supports file shares and other things. That gets into permissions. That's where we're going to do things like become if we need to use a file or a folder share type source, just so that we can get to those things. Now, then we're going to say, go ahead and use this script instead. So this actually wrote out the URL here. So if you can see, I'm going to go ahead and add the dash and see how it's rewriting that URL down there for me. All right, so that's the script I'm going to do. So I'll grab this. I'll save it as something like Chocolatey install. This actually performs all the same stuff that the other one does, except it's all internal for me. And then I'll make it accessible by internal URL. So I'm going to put that up into a NuGet repository. And then for Ansible, we can skip the rest of the steps. So what you're going to see on this particular page is we'll actually have a generic set of instructions as we come in here, and then we'll have one for each of the configuration managers. Right? And so to kind of give you an example of what that looks like, I think I'm on a package. Let's look for Git here. So give you an example of what that looks like. So if I jump in on this Git package right here, and I click on organization, right? So this is what you remember: Choco install, upgrade, uninstall. By the way, Chocolatey got a new website release this weekend. So if you haven't seen it yet, here it is, and it's quite a big release. So again, we have that internal URL. We have steps on how to get that package into our environment. 2 sets of steps there, and then we can simply click on Ansible, and it's already pre-written it for us. Right? So if we say, oh, you know, actually this is going to be HTTP somewhere, if I can spell, right? And that'll be Choco, say base, right? So it's writing that for us as we do our thing. And then it points us off to the docs, and then, of course, it's going to point us to other things that we can do in the configuration that we're talking about right now. So jump right back over to my slide deck, which it does not like me, so I'm going to have to click on it. There we go. So that same WinChocolatey module that manages that Chocolatey installation is kind of dual purpose. It's actually more purpose for the software manager, the package management, right? It's possible that there might be an option that's only for installation of Chocolatey itself. The guys that would tell you that are in the back, right back there. Go ahead and wave your hands, Jordan, Matt. If they do that, what I've been told is that it'll be a very long deprecation route for that. So that'll still work for quite a while. So, all right. Now, lots of different options are available, right? So we can, install something. We can set source username, source password. If we've already set up that into our default sources, we don't need to provide the source. If we need to install something, say that's a Chocolatey package, say like Powershell, that is a Windows update. Now, Windows updates have a little problem with WinRM. That is fixed with Become, right? There's a talk on Become and Windows tomorrow at 3. 3. I have it at the very end of the slide, so I'll point to it then. Jordan has given that talk. So Become in Windows, I think it's me, myself, and System. Sounds like a fun talk. We can also pin. So another feature that Chocolatey supports, like other package managers, is putting something to a particular version and keeping it there. Right? So if we need to pin it to a particular version, we can do that. And there's quite a few more options that come along with that, so highly recommend take a look at. All right, so the next is really removing that default community source, right, as we see, and then setting up our internal sources. And we kind of saw this a little bit earlier, just making it a little bigger here. Where am I at? I lost my timer. Of course, then we can set Windows features or Chocolatey features as well. And some of those we might do. That disable we saw earlier, we might turn on this new feature of Chocolatey where we can exit when a reboot's needed. That way we can use the Win Reboot module to actually perform that reboot for us, just subscribing to a particular package. So we could perform the reboot, then go ahead and install that package. So the exit when reboot's detected is beforehand, right, before that package is installed. So it's seeing that, oh, there's a pending reboot, or there's part of this install happened and it wasn't able to finish. So Chocolatey configuration, so config settings, you'd be able to set cache location and other things. And this particular link takes us to all these lovely options that are here. which is right here. So Chocolatey configuration we get to by going into Learn, down to Docs, and over here on, I think it's under General? No. So I'm totally wrong. So there it is, Chocolatey config. Right. So that'll bring us to the configuration. Lots of different config settings, features as well that we can set. So if there's something you need like FIPS, right, FIPS enabled, you can actually turn that on with Chocolatey. In fact, the first thing Chocolatey is going to tell you after it's installed is you need to turn that on. Right. So if you already have FIPS mode set up on the machine, it's going to make you do it. All right, so reporting. So one of the nice things about Chocolatey, again, because it manages more than what's in programs and features, it's telling us about all the software it's managing, whether that's zips, scripts, binaries. We're able to see all of that. And the biggest reason for that, and the biggest reason that you're going to find that great, is security findings, right? Security findings don't stop at programs and features. Back when we had shell shock, it was affecting Git. Bash came through Git portable. Guess which one of those didn't show up in programs and features, right? You would be able to see both of those with Chocolatey if you're managing them with Chocolatey, right? And because you're using Ansible and Chocolatey together, you can very quickly remediate those types of things. And basically, you're able to see everything that's being managed on that system that you're bringing in through Chocolatey. So another thing that Chocolatey brings to the table is it can see what's out of date. So as you're putting up newer versions of packages, maybe waiting on a maintenance window, you're sitting in a no-op mode, you can see about how much stuff is going to get upgraded the next time you're able to actually roll through that maintenance window. Autosync, this is an important feature to cover really quickly. So if we think about Chocolatey open source, and Chocolatey open source is based in strictly Chocolatey package management. And so when Chocolatey installs a package that is possibly an installer package, so let's say Adobe Reader. So Chocolatey installs that particular package. That package will install the Adobe Reader software upgraded in programs and features. And of course, if we upgrade that Chocolatey package, that should upgrade that software. And if we uninstall that package, that should uninstall that software, of course, right? But it's really important to know open source is strictly managing the Chocolatey package. So if somebody goes onto the system and uninstalls the software for Adobe Reader out of programs and features, the package is still there, right? And so Ansible and Chocolatey are going to be reporting that it's still there. In the commercial edition, we're allowing Chocolatey to step back and do more system and software state management. And so we're able to see that the software that this particular package is managing is gone. So we can actually remove the package, and then Ansible and Chocolatey can put it back and put back in the software, right? And then you get any kind of configuration drift reporting. So autosync is a pretty important feature to look at when you're considering which way to go. Central management, this just brings, again, that central reporting in. We're going to be doing quite a bit with this, so we're pretty excited about that. Lots of other features, some of those that really allow Chocolatey to be flexible, things like bringing in package parameters, so you can actually pass in things at runtime that might change how configuration gets set, might change other things. Other features in the commercial edition, I don't really need to get into that too much. But what we're going to see on our roadmap is more support for MSIX is coming, right? So Microsoft brought that out, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago almost now? And so they're going to start doing probably a bit more with that. So we're wanting to support that. Of course, you can write all the PowerShell now to support it, but we want to write all that PowerShell, manage it, and just give you something easy to hook into. Pack validation. So one of the things, anybody in here actually submit up to the community repository right now? So if you do, push up to the community repository. Yes, Adil, thank you. You'll notice that when it goes up, there's this check, and these checks are that consistency. They say, hey, you've done this, we make recommendations. We want to bring that to Chocolatey when you actually generate the package. So when you create the package, it should go through and do those checks during that point. So you'll get all that feedback in Chocolatey. So that's something that we're bringing to the open source, and then we're going to do more with that. Authentic code signing, so being able to actually sign the full package, right? So NuGet has it, we're going to be adding it. We also want to bring in GPG, PGP type signing, more for traceability on those community packages. Mostly Windows supports more of the authentic code stuff, and in commercial situations, I think authentic code is where most people want to be. Other features as well. So to learn more about Chocolatey, you can go to chocolatey.org, go to the docs, check that out. We have a lot of docs in there. We are working on cleaning it up. So if you've been in there and you're like, I'm lost, just know that we are going through, we're going to be cleaning that up, making it quite a bit better. And that is our focus now that we've got that website updated. So we're going to start working in that docs area. So hopefully it becomes much more consumable. But we do have an expansive community, so you can get on Slack. There's a Chocolatey community on Slack. There's a Gitter, if anybody still uses Gitter. We have that too. And I think there's a Freenode IRC, but I don't think it's monitored right now. It's also out there for Chocolatey. You can reach out on Twitter, Chocolatey NuGet on Twitter, or Fervent Coder, that's who I am. And if you're interested in looking at the commercial stuff, I'd say reach out to sales through that contact form. So organizational use. The blue boxes. Is anybody in here actually doing this? Stand up. All right. Give yourself a high five. And then, Adil, did you catch all those guys? Yeah. You get one of these shirts. Okay. So find Adil afterwards. Okay, so demos, getting that started. So I mentioned that there are other Windows talks. So 3 p.m. today. We have Nathan right back there, Nick right back there. They're doing a talk on 1,000 servers on a 30-day rebuild. Highly recommended. 10 Things I Hate About You at 4 p.m. Matt Davis in the back doing that talk. Also an excellent talk. Highly recommended if you haven't seen it yet. And then tomorrow, Ansible Tower and Windows Management, James Bailey, Sam Pusey, are you guys in the room? I don't know. If not, that talk should be pretty good. And then Me, Myself, and System using Become on Windows. That is probably going to become a lot more. Sorry about that. But you're going to see quite a bit more as it applies to things. I actually learned about it recently, so I'm super excited to see that you can do that without having to schedule a Windows task to do things. So very excited about that. So that's tomorrow I guess it's at 2 p.m. So there are other talks that I noticed in the schedule that do include some Windows, but their focus isn't necessarily straight onto Windows. So I'd say go out to the schedule builder, search for Windows, and you'll see probably a few more talks show up as well. Stop by our booth, right? So this shirt that I just mentioned, we're going to be doing random drawings based on folks that have stopped and got their badge scanned. So if you've come by and got your badge scanned, which I don't have on me, make sure you get that. That gets you entered into the drawings that we're going to do on random intervals, and then we'll just contact you by email because we'll have that. We have more chocolatey gray shirts, so we have a lot of these out there that we'll be giving away. And then meet our folks, right? So one of them is right back here. His name is Adil. Adil, wave your hand. And tell us about your Windows experience. So we're always excited to hear what people are doing, right? Because, So Adil says we appreciate the support, and we're an open source project, much like Ansible, and we've been enjoying kind of working with these guys, hopefully not breaking them too often. Hey, Jordan, I owe you a beer, man. I'll buy it tonight at the thing. Are the drinks free? All right, so before we go to that slide, let's jump over and take a look here. So everybody can see that in the back? I might bump it up just a little bit just to give us a little bit more. So where are we at? Font. Let's go up to 20. There we go. So in here I run Chocolatey. I got Chocolatey 10.15 set up on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run Choco new. We can say Bob. Let's go with 1Password here. 1Password. What this is going to do, and this is even an open source, it's going to generate out a bunch of files for me, which if I want to step in and take a look, if I can type, that's right here, right? And so this is a little bit tinier, but what it's done is it's generated out a new package here, and in that Chocolatey package, we have a new spec, right? And I'm just going to open this guy, and then I'm going to open up the rest of these guys too, so we can see all the stuff. Hush. Okay, fine. You say no preparation here? Yeah, none. Absolutely none. Oh, there we go. All right. I didn't hear that. What was that? If only we'd actually written this. Yes, yes. No. So we have a lot of interweave documentation. So if you go out to chocolatey.org, you go to the docs on creating packages, you're going to see an overwhelming amount of information. Start here. Run Choco new. You're going to see that it's kind of broken down into those areas right when you need it. We like to say the right documentation right where it's necessary. So that's what we're hoping we get you there. But This is that manifest file. This is going to tell me information about this particular package. It's also going to allow me to do dependency management, which is really important. You're not going to find that really on anything else on Windows. And for folks that aren't familiar, say with RPM or dpackage or some of those things, this is where you get to say, hey, I depend on something else, right? And this something else, I could say minimum version, I'll say 6.0. I'd have a package for that, and that package might define dependencies, right? And so when a package manager goes to get that, it will go say, oh, I need to have these other things installed first, and it'll make sure that it resolves and gets all that stuff installed in the proper order for you, right? If you've had to do that outside of a package manager, you know that is very, very painful, especially if you have version constraints, right? So let's say it was like, I need to have at least version 6, 7 or 8, but less than 9. Now, I just did that, right? That's how easy it is to set your version constraint. And sorry, that's all the way down at the bottom. I'll move it up, right? And then maybe bump up the font just a hair here so we can see it a little better. Yeah. Very, very simple to do that. And this is great because if I'm deploying to a system that maybe already has Java 9 or past installed, it's going to stop. It's going to be like, so what do you want to do here? This is going to stop. It's not going to let it happen. How many people have ever deployed something and it broke something else and it took you 2 days to figure that out, or longer, right? This is what's going to stop that from happening. So very, very good thing to be in package management. There is a to-do. To-do is fantastic. We're talking about a lot of things that this really goes over, where we're saying internal use, don't look at the community repository, don't look at how those packages are done. They have to do it that way, right? You embed your binaries as much as you can. And we're going to go through a high level how to fill out your contents. Well, this is bumping around a little bit. Before modify, seeing how those particular things, and then there's also, of course, how many people here test their deployments not in production? People don't raise their hands forever. So one of the things that we have is we have a test environment you can actually use, and you can be testing with Vagrant, with VirtualBox, Hyper-V, or VMware, right? So you can actually be testing your deployments and building that confidence long before you go to deploy to production. That's where we want to be. So that's there. There's a workshop. So when you come out of here and you're like, I have no idea what's next. I need to get started. I don't know where to get started. Go to this Chocolatey. You can go to Fervent Coder, Chocolatey Workshop, but it's going to redirect you to this Chocolatey Workshop. We'll start from the beginning, get you an environment set up, and you can kind of go through all those exercises. And they are quite step-by-step, so they kind of help you through that process. And the way to find the script, again, just run choco_new bob, and then open up the underscore to-do file. There's also a README. The README is becoming less important. But you might find some good stuff in here, like some of the environment variables that get set and other things that you might be able to use. Right? There are 3 PowerShell scripts that get generated. There's a before modify, and as it says here, the before modify is before I upgrade or uninstall this package, the installed package, run the instructions in here, and this allows me to shut down any services that might be locking files inside of this folder. Chocolatey is generally good at handling that, but sometimes it needs a little bit of extra help, right? 98% of the time, you don't need this file, so you can just get rid of it. There is an install and there's an uninstall. So the uninstall, 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, you're probably not going to need this file either, because Chocolatey has this thing called auto uninstaller. So if you install software into programs and features, when it installs, Chocolatey already knows how to uninstall the software when you remove the Chocolatey package, right? In case you do want to have this here, of course, you would come in, you would fill out some of the information that's here, tell it where to go find it inside of programs and features, give it the right silent arguments, and it can go see if it's still installed and then remove it. License and verification only apply to the community repository for the most part. I mean, you could fill those out if you want, but typically if you're building packages internally, you're going to trust them somewhat, right, already. Then we have Chocolatey install. So this is where the bulk of the work happens, right? So in here, we're setting up our information. So we're gathering information about what we're doing, and then we're going to pass that information to a function. And typically for you, it's going to be this one. Install Chocolatey install package, not install Chocolatey package. I know the difference is tiny. Naming is hard, guys. Naming is hard. And then you're stuck with it for years. So that's why those are named differently. Install Chocolatey packages goes out and pulls something from somewhere remote, and then it calls install Chocolatey install package. So if you already have the files local, you can just skip a step, right? If they're in the package, you just call this other one instead. Lots of examples in here as well. So that's kind of what that looks like. Now, I need to get a package here, and let's say I got a couple packages here. Oh, here's a 1Password, right? So I'm just going to right click, and I know that's a little bit tiny to see, but there's two little options here. One to bring up the package builder UI, and one to just simply go ahead and create that Chocolatey package. So what I get in 5 seconds is it's going to fully generate a package for me that I can actually use to deploy. And so what it's done, if we jump in here, we can see that it's already created this fully ready to go Chocolatey package. That's a new package. It's kind of like a fancy zip. So if I rename that to zip, I can actually peek into it, right? And I can see there's that new spec. There's some of the stuff that Chocolatey has generated that tells it how to kind of manage that package. But all my files are in here too, right? And so as I come back out of that, I'm going to rename it to new package here. Yes. We can take a look at that new spec, and similar to the other new spec, we're getting all that information. It's pulling all of the important information out of that installer, right? Anything that it can't get, that's where it goes back to a to-do list that says, hey, I wasn't able to figure out a version. Grab that, put that in here, right? In here, of course, that binary is there, and it's already determined everything that it needs for that. So you can see this is very clean, very well formatted. That's on purpose, right? Because you're going to put this into source control. Most likely, you're going to maintain this over time, right? We're going to make that easy for you. So very clean. If you remember the Chocolatey install over here, lots of work to do, right? So we're trying to make that quite a bit easier. So it's determined this is in a setup. It's got all the good silent arguments for that already, all the good stuff that works with Chocolatey too, right? And then simply calls that function. And so what's great about Chocolatey is this is simply a PowerShell script. So if I don't want to do any of this, I can just do copy. So I can do an X copy, right? I can do pretty much anything because I'm in PowerShell when it relates to Windows. So I have the opportunity to do all that now. Of course, I did want to do that. But that file's already created for me. So no. So let's actually install that guy. So I can do one of two things. I can go ahead and push that up to a repository for us just because we're limited on time. Let's see where we're at here. Yeah, we're quite limited. So we're going to move into questions here in a moment. So I would go ahead and right click and go ahead and push that up if I was going to do it that way. But I'm just going to copy it, right? I'm going to bring it back up a directory and then we can see it get installed just so you know I'm not smoke and mirrors here. All right, so CLS, LS. So if you see in this folder, there's that wrong folder. So I got one more folder to go. This is how you know it's real, folks. All right, one more time. All right, so there's the package, right? And so now I'm going to run choco install 1Password, right? So that's the name of the package ID. And I'm going to say the source. So -s is short for source. If I wanted to see the long one, I could hit tab. If I have the tab completion on with Chocolatey, I get that, right? But I can do -s and the dot. That's short for, right here in this folder. Works in both PowerShell and command, .exe. And then I'm going to say -y because I want to make sure that it doesn't stop and prompt on everything that it needs to ask. I'll just go. And what this is going to do is this should install 1Password, right? And so as we look at programs and features, it just showed up. And of course over here, as it installed, it said, hey, I can automatically be uninstalled, right? So I know auto uninstaller is going to be able to take care of that if I do a Choco uninstall. So we're moving along. Take a look at what we have installed here. So we'll do Choco list, local only, and then include programs. We're going to see that we are managing 34 things with Chocolatey. We got a few things we're not yet managing with Chocolatey. There are things in the commercial edition that allow us to take over that stuff. We simply run Choco sync, and I can actually do that. Choco sync, and that will reach over into programs and features for all the things that it's not managing. It will generate packaging and baseline the system so that Chocolatey is now managing everything. If we don't have that, and we're on open source, what we can do is we simply install a package that represents that piece of software, and it will upgrade the software that's there, or we can pass, don't run any scripts, just take over at the same version. So we have two options in that we can do. So now if we run our Choco list local only, we'll see Chocolatey is managing all the stuff, and we can kind of move from there. So now, we get down this route. Actually, I'm going to stop just in a moment so we can finish. But if we get a security finding on that and we say, oh, I actually need to go find a newer version of that, we do want to stay on that 4.6 side, I could download that, and then I could just bring up that package builder, go through that same generation, or bring in that new installer and update the packaging Either way that I go, it'll still be pretty quick. And so once that's there, the thing to notice here is if we're in the right folder, they sit right next to each other, right? That's on purpose. So if you need to deploy that onto a file share, you can, right? And so when we do the install, what we'll be doing instead is, of course, we'll be upgrading, and that should upgrade that software. Move that up for us. So it sees we have a particular version of the Chocolatey package installed. It's going to upgrade to that new version. What's happening in the back end is the Chocolatey package is actually managing the installation or upgrade of that software for us, right? And of course, that finishes, and we'll be on that new version. And we can see that. So we're on that 4.6.1.6. All right. So we went through all of that. There's central management. We're not going to get into that, but I would say stop by the booth. We'll talk about that there. Questions? In the back.
Yeah, so I'm new to all this stuff. So I'm trying to understand, as a Windows customer, what is this supposed to displace in my environment?
That's a great question. So as a Windows customer, what is this supposed to displace in my environment? So the question I would say is, what are you using now to do your software management, and are you managing all the software with something?
So would SCCM be a normal thing that customers utilize apart from this?
So would SCCM be a thing that normal customers recognize? Typically, people are going to integrate SCCM with Chocolatey. Chocolatey actually bring better reporting, a little bit more stability to the table, and you can actually test your deployments before you put them in prod, right? So you're able to use SCCM with Chocolatey. So it's actually making things better for you. If you're choosing that you want to look to replace SCCM with, say, Chocolatey Ansible, there are definitely routes for that, right? But we'll, and I don't know as far as Ansible goes, but I'm going to speak with a different configuration management hat on. Chocolatey and the configuration manager doesn't always replace desktop client deployments, right? So you might still need SCCM or something in those areas. And so you would look to pair Chocolatey with that tool, and you would look to pair Chocolatey with Ansible, right? So what it's going to bring is going to bring better software management to the table. It's going to bring better visibility for all the software you might be managing, even those things that don't have installers. Did that answer your question? Question in the back?
So you deployed a newer version of 1Password on top of it all. And is Chocolatey cognizant of if the software itself is supported for upgrade, or does it do an internalized uninstall and then install a new package?
Great question. So we did an install of 1Password, then we upgraded it. And the question was, is Chocolatey cognizant of that? Whether the software can be uninstalled, right, and does it manage that to uninstall and then install the new, or does it simply run the upgrade? So it tends to defer to the installer if you haven't told it anything else, but if you need for it to uninstall first, you can actually write those instructions right in that Chocolatey package. Great question. So the question was, when it comes to like Chrome, Firefox, they have auto update that happens, and how do you prevent that? Well, if you're using the community stuff, we recommend just let it upgrade, right, and then pin the package so it won't try to do anything, right? And you just let the software do its thing. If you do want to actually restrict it to a particular version, you can add in the bits that need to go into the registry, right, into the Chocolatey package. And we've seen folks do that, right? So you disable the auto update, and then you can use Chocolatey to control that. Question, Tucker?
Do you guys have like plans for roping in all the desktop icons that get created by all like the packages? I mean, like, it's kind of random. You don't know whether or not the provider's going to throw a bunch of icons on there or not.
Great question. So the question is, do we have plans to manage desktop icons that sometimes get created? The answer is yes, there's a feature out there, and we thought about how we would best do that, where you say, hey, I don't want any of these desktop icons, and it will go back and clean them up as they get installed. Because everything is different how it works, right? And we like to say every Windows installer is a special snowflake. Some are extra special. And so, yeah, so we have some plans on that, and that actually will be an open source. So.
I assume this works with server too.
Yeah, so this works with Docker containers, so server core, Docker containers, on-prem in the cloud, and all versions of Windows. So from client to servers. Most of the people in here, I think, are deploying on servers. So,
Well, I'm talking about deployment, not, yeah, servers, not just client machines.
yeah, definitely servers too. Sorry, the question was, this works with servers and clients. Other questions? We got time for one more.
So the deployments that require a lot of human user input, like next, and check. You said that was more in the commercial edition?
Great question. So question is deployments that require more handholding, right? So the next, doing all of that, and then you get to something. It does not require the commercial version. What it does require is MSI repackaging typically. Now, the tool that you use for MSI repackaging might cost money. There are free ones out there. There are some that are very, very expensive. One of the things that I didn't mention, but it was on the slide, is if you are a customer of ours, you can come and actually get what's called professional packaging services for a flat rate. And our team will actually do that for you. So you can go one or two routes, right, with that.
Like a manifest file also, like a section in that file on how you accommodate those
So
human user entries?
yeah, so you would say these are the things I do, right? And then you would actually run through that installer. It's recording what's happening on the system. You get an MSI that you send out instead for that. And some of them are very sophisticated, so they can allow you to kind of say, well, sometimes we'll do this, sometimes we won't.
That's actually why I was sent here from California, was to figure out how to do this.
Oh, right on. Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely options for that. I'd say come find us at the booth, or if we have time after this. So, all right, that's what I got. Like I said, stop by our booth and grab some shirts. For those folks that I promised shirts to, come right up front. Other than that, thanks.